Welcome to another brand new episode of Between Two Berms, the Omaha Storm Chasers podcast, where we talk about the Omaha Storm Chasers. I am your host, Scott Pop, joined by my sagacious co-host, Andrew Asbury. First off, do you want to know what it means?
Yeah, of course.
Sagacious. Wise or discerning?
I'll take it.
There you go. There you go.
How was your holiday?
It was good. I got away from Omaha for a while, went down to Kansas City, spent some time with some family, and got pretty bored of them quickly. How was yours?
I would say very similar. Didn't get as bored with them as you might have, though. The nephew keeps things interesting.
That's true. I mean, I was good for like a solid week, and then the last few days.
The one perk of working in minor league baseball, you won't get summer holidays off, but you do get a decent winter holiday.
Yeah, and you got to take advantage.
Yes. Very excited to be back. Very excited for this podcast. Get to hear from a couple of coworkers, past coworkers, that I very much enjoyed working with.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time with these guys when they were here, and I would call them friends. Good friends.
Great friends. But, you know, this is one of those episodes where it's a peek behind the curtain, telling some stories of behind-the-scenes stuff that, you know, the regular fan is not privy to. And, yeah, we hope you enjoy it. We have a lot of fun just because we get to know some of these characters. We hope you get a sense of some of these characters and how goofy they can be.
So we have joining us Cody Allen, who was our former manager of marketing and event presentation.
It's a mouthful.
It is, but he essentially ran a lot of the promotions and the control room, definitely, and a lot of other stuff.
This past season, he was with Reno, the Reno Aces, and now he is in his home state of Washington, surrounded by friends and family, and doing his own thing.
And we are also joined by Nick Sandberg. He was the former mascot assistant and then mascot manager and then
promotions manager
and then theme nights and promotions manager.
He had a lot of titles.
He did a lot of stuff.
Part of what I call the DC3, who I came up with, is Nick and the former community relations manager, Becky Frischman. So very attached to those people.
Yes, so enjoy them. All right, so we are joined by former Storm Chasers employees.
Former greats,
Cody Allen and Nick Sandberg. How are you guys?
I'm doing great.
Yeah. All right, so we had you guys on to discuss a bunch of random promotions and other stupid ideas that did not make the cut because you two were usually quite full of them.
For better or worse.
Most of them didn't make the cut, yeah.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So, you know, obviously explaining to the listeners here in the off season, as soon as, you know, the previous season ends, we go right into some planning, right into some vision. We start talking about some new ideas, and in these meetings is the first time that you'll usually get to stand up and talk in front of ownership and managers and, you know, tell them straight to their face these great ideas that somehow got cut. So, you know, hopping right into it, let's just start off with a bang. And Cody Allen, you stood up in front of the ownership and everybody, and you had a great idea one day. And, you know, it was a former NFL great. But go ahead and explain to the people, you know, the juice is loose now.
You know, I had a bit of a feeling that we were going to start with this story, which is totally fine. Andrew, to your point, I can't call you Andrew. I have to call you Asbury. That was too weird.
Yeah, that was weird.
Asbury, to your point, when discussing promotions ideas, theme nights, kind of big picture stuff, really, when we were in Omaha, the vision session was our first chance to really put it out there in the world to ownership and to the head honchos. But really, I mean, you're thinking about different ideas all the time and during the season and all that. But my wonderful idea just so happened to be around a time where the famous O.J. Simpson had been released from prison, and it was my idea to have a Juice is Loose night. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that before I was able to fully explain my idea, I had a wonderful hype person in Shaylee Dinella, former creative services manager of the Storm Chasers, tell everyone in the room to shut up and listen because this was really important. So once she got that out of the way, she was very good at telling people to shut up. Once everyone had calmed down, I let them know that my idea was for a Juices Loose night, that we could have concessions that were orange juice, cocktails, orange chicken, a bunch of different random things there from the concession side, try to do some specialty jerseys. A lot of these ideas you kind of pick and choose from other organizations that you've heard, and one of the things that I had heard a few years back was about Deflategate with Tom Brady and how there was a team up, I believe, in Buffalo, New York, that would give people discounted tickets if they brought in a properly inflated football. So for my idea, it was, well, if we bring in youth batting gloves, and if they can prove that the glove does not fit their hand, they can indeed get a discounted ticket and come into the game. Which, along with this silliness, we also, obviously, one of the staples with the Storm Chasers is Curl the Pearl. I really wanted to find a white Ford Bronco and have that interrupt the Hurl the Pearl promotion and have a very slow speed pursuit that went around the warning track during.
Fix all the cameras in the
during Hurl the Pearl, we would stop everything and have that. So that was my big pitch. When I pitched it, I got a lot of laughs, a lot of great feedback. President and GM Marty Cordero was ready to go. He wanted to pull the trigger on it. At first, I was really surprised that was so well received. But then, of course, it got the axe probably about a month later when ownership and higher-ups kind of came to their senses and realized, while in minor league baseball you want to be as gimmicky as possible, maybe that wouldn't be the greatest of publicity for us at the time. So, sadly, it was no longer meant to be.
That's personally one of my favorite suggestions, and the one thing that I remembered about that was, it was during a time that was very relevant. All of these documentaries and all these mockumentaries were coming out about OJ. It was rehashing everything because his he was getting out of jail, so everybody was talking about it. And when you brought it up as a joke just in the office at one point, I was just like, if we can get it, this might be promotion of the year, golden bobblehead worthy. So I was super excited about it, and obviously vastly disappointed that it got shot down.
Also, if you're curious, we still have the jersey file on the server somewhere. I believe it was like a big orange on a jersey, and that's it. Cody, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember exactly.
I think it was I think it was an orange grove was the main feature for that one. And again, back to Asbury's point, I mean, that's really how these promotions and theme nights get started. Is it starts off as a joke or a silly idea that you bring up in the office, and then it gets enough traction, enough people start hearing about it, and then you want to kind of collaborate, see where you can add and build it into a theme night, and then present it and see if it sticks.
I mean, there are success stories there, too. That's how Potholes got started, was a conversation after Andrew Green, former social media manager, created the logo. He and I had a short conversation about, maybe we could actually do this, and threw a few ideas around, and then
literally like a week later it turned into something.
And then it was something. So
well, we can talk about some of the ones that got cut, but there's several examples like the Potholes. For example, Nick, I think you have a few on your list here of ones that we talked about. We just didn't think that it would actually turn into something, and then it actually did.
Yeah. The other one I had on here was the halfway to Halloween night we did this year, which I wasn't too excited about. I had an idea for it. I was like, we could do this, and brought it to Vision, and they were like, oh, we've been looking for an April theme night, because that falls, at the end of April, and And then Potholes came around, and Potholes got so ginormous that we stopped. I mean, we had gone too far to turn back on Halfway to Halloween, so we still did both, but we had gone so far with Potholes, and Potholes was so big that Halfway to Halloween, we still did it. But
it got buried a little bit.
It got buried, for sure. It's hard to message that many, or when they're happening like a week apart, it's hard to message that properly, and we focused a lot on Potholes. So Halfway to Halloween would have been better off getting axed and coming around the next year. I think it'd be really good. I think it has potential, but that was one on that list.
What else do you have on that list over there?
Ooh, my favorite one was doing a faux back. I know other teams have done it too. Like, obviously this franchise has been around for 50 years, 51, going on 52 years now, but so they were the Omaha Royals back in the 80s, and Bo Jackson also never played here. He famously skipped Omaha in his rise to
That he did, unfortunately.
Rise to Kansas City. So I wanted to do a faux back night where it would be 1986, back when Bo was playing baseball, and we'd throw it back to 1986. We would do the Storm Chasers moniker back in the 80s. So what would those jerseys look like? What would the Storm Chasers first logo look like if they came about in the 80s? And then do a Bo Jackson in a Storm Chasers uniform bobblehead.
So then it would be Bo back night, not faux back night.
Cody, I miss you. I miss you so much, Cody. That was one of my favorite ones that we didn't end up doing because it's expensive to get jerseys created, and we had so many other theme nights going through that had so many different logos, and that was one of my favorite ones though that I never got to pull the trigger on.
Let's see. One for those who have come year over year might be familiar with is the National Wild Turkey Federation and their outdoors night. So once a year they have an outdoors night. We usually have some sort of camo jersey, and we go out there and we raise money for NWTF by auctioning off the jerseys. But one year, again, Cody to the rescue, came up with, because it's outdoors night, and who's the most famous person that you associate with outdoors and imagery of outdoors? Bob Ross. NWTF didn't go for it, but Cody, how did you even come up with that, make that association between Bob Ross and NWTF outdoors night?
Well, there's a bit of a side story to that as well, but basically it was, I think Bob Ross's collection of TV shows had just been added to Netflix, and this was, a winter night in Omaha, Nebraska. Didn't have a whole lot to do, and I said, hey, let's watch some Bob Ross. And then sure enough, a week or two later, we started working on the initial push for NWTF and working with them and outdoors night and all that stuff. And it was, well, all this dude does is paint scenery very well, but that was his big push. And since we're doing outdoor stuff, why not connect the two? It's a little bit of nostalgia and pop culture along with the theme and the outdoorsy kind of look. It was again, it's a pitch, and a lot of the times when doing this, I think people are more polite, and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, or that sounds kind of fun. And then, once they're out of the room, it's, no, I hate that. That's terrible. Let's call them tomorrow and nix that. So it was a similar situation there, but the other determining factor that I remember was around that time, I believe it was the Daytona Tortugas had just had a Bob Ross night the year before, and I believe it won a golden bobblehead for that night. So we weren't quite ready to try and replicate what they were doing, and the sponsor was not quite ready to take that jump away from the camo or outdoors textures or kind of that theme that they had developed already with the Storm Chasers and their brand.
And another example of a jersey that was well crafted but never saw the light of day. I still have it hanging up in my office. I look at it often, and it's a shame that the general public hasn't seen it. We might release it whenever we release this episode. You never know. And see what could have been, but love
we
those
gotta
jerseys.
keep the secret.
Gotta keep it close to the vest. Nick and Cody, both of you have ran the show, quote unquote, at some point. There's another aspect to theme nights, and that is the on-field entertainment. The games on the field, running the show upstairs, calling out which videos to drop, which PA reads to read. But what's some of your favorite on-field games that maybe didn't happen, or ones that you absolutely hated and probably wished you could have cut right then and there?
Well, Asbury, you were a big part of this on-field promotion. A thing now famously or infamously known as the helicopter drop. The helicopter drop, it was supposed to be as simple as that. A helicopter would hover over our center field, drop a bunch of our Hurl the Pro balls into some kiddie pools. It would determine which section or which show wound up winning that night. And the game had just ended. Our president and GM, Marty Cordero, on the microphone to usher in the promotion. And no one could find the helicopter for the first 5 to 10 minutes. In fact, he said into the mic, "Does anyone see the helicopter?" Now, obviously, no one can answer him back, but the helicopter was in the distance and coming in.
It was out past the second baseline, as one of our employees called it.
That's right.
Oh, that's correct. The great second baseline. So the helicopter finally makes its way down. Everything's ready to go. We've got weights in the kiddie pools. We got Hurl the Pro balls up in the helicopter. The only thing we didn't anticipate was how much force helicopter propellers can put down on the field. And sure enough, these 3 kiddie pools just go flying everywhere. And now we've got to reset. We've got to make sure that it's back in a spot where these Hurl Pro balls can be dumped. So we've got 3 to 4 people sprinting after these pools.
So Casey, our former boss, was one of them. Andrea Stavabador was out there as well. And I was very hesitant to help. I was a little freaked out by the fact that there was a helicopter so close to me.
You were so hesitant, in fact, that Marty had to hop on the mic and say, "Andrew, need a little bit of help here." But you jumped into action. You were able to help it. The first bag of Hurl the Pro balls goes down and goes flying everywhere. I don't think any of them actually hit the kiddie pools.
Not a single one.
But fortunately, we had a couple more bags of them, and we were able to get through it. But it just goes to, it was the great example of a minor league promotion. The plan is almost fully formed. We're almost ready to go, and then sure enough, there's a slip up or something, but you roll with the punches, you set back up, and you get through it.
Yeah, definitely a fond memory of mine. I think I still have the Snapchat story from one of our other former employees saved for years to come.
We were all winners that day, really. It didn't matter how many Hurl the Pro balls landed in one of those pools. We all won.
Well, Nick, do you have an example?
I don't know if any unique ones are coming to mind right now. I really just enjoyed, for 3 years, just driving the truck for Hurl the Pro. Like, it was so... Like, it got old at the end of a homestand when I'd done it, 6 nights in a row, but every single time getting behind the wheel, bringing the truck down that ramp, and just hoping you weren't going to scrape the side on either.
It's nerve-wracking.
A little bit nerve-wracking, and then just driving around while people just start throwing stuff. And you never want to be in the passenger seat of the Hurl the Pro truck, because that's the angle that all the balls are coming in from, so you're going to get hit in the face. But being able to do it when you're in there alone, and balls go flying around, and they end up under the gas or brake pedal, and you're just trying to get them out without crashing the truck, without stopping either, to give people an unfair advantage. It was still one of my favorite things to do.
How many times did you almost run over an opposing player or one of our own?
You'd think it would be the opposing players more often, but honestly it was about 50-50 between our players just not paying attention or the opposing players. And the opposing players also just like to throw water at the truck.
Yeah,
So
last year that happened all the time.
Yeah.
They're just
It's not fun.
You'd get
throwing
wet
so
doing
much
the job
water.
too. And but yeah, opposing players when they're trying to stand in the on deck circle and you got to honk at them, or out of the bullpen too. They're not expecting you to come by out of the bullpen.
So very first game that I worked here, T-shirt cannon, going around the track. I was given 2 instructions. If a shirt did not make it onto the berm and landed on the outfield warning track, that they would stop, and that I was to go out, retrieve it, throw it into the stands, and then immediately exit the field. So I was given that instruction. We're making our way around the outfield wall. One definitely does not get to the berm, lands on the outfield track, and all I hear is go, go, go. So I'm like, okay, I need to get out and go get the shirt. And I get halfway out the golf cart, no turning back, and the golf cart has not stopped. And I try my best at a graceful landing. There was nothing graceful about it. Ended up trying to backpedal, made a fool of myself, fell, rolled over a couple times, still got up, got the shirt, threw it into the crowd, got off. But needless to say, Casey, our former boss, was not happy. I was not allowed to do the T-shirt cannon anymore or help them out for good half the season. But that was a good first impression that I made.
Over back there.
Yeah, that's what Nick immediately took over for me.
I started writing a lot more on the T-shirt cannon that year.
the other one I thought of. I wasn't even here for it, but I've heard about was the Amazing Christopher.
Oh, Cody, that was a Cody Allen booking, wasn't it?
Real quick,
yeah.
harmless plug. Our TikTok for the Amazing Christopher up to 4.4 million views. Never would have thought that the Amazing Christopher would be that amazing. But Cody, carry on and tell the people about Amazing Christopher.
Well, the Amazing Christopher was my former boss, Rob Sternberg's, I think, final act that he booked prior to leaving the Storm Chasers. So I inherited that one and got to pick up the pieces there. Saw some YouTube videos of him and his performance and things like that, and thought, oh, all right, well, this won't be too bad. In the communication, it's asking him to please show up a little earlier that day so we can do a little dry run through of all the things that are going on, our kind of plan for him. He shows up, takes one look at our seating bowl and our situation in the dugouts, and he goes, I can't do it. And we go, well, what do you mean? He goes, with all the mannequins that I must attach to myself for this dance, I will not easily be able to get on and off the field from these different locations. I guess I should specify that the Amazing Christopher is a one-man dancing machine, and he has some mannequins that are attached in front and behind him that he controls to do a simulated choreographed dance with them. So with his setup, he was not easily able to get on the field. So as we're walking the field, we talked to our grounds crew and our operations crew and kind of pick their brain about their best thoughts for this, of where the best entry would be, and we land on the left field entrance onto the field would be the only viable option for him. That meant that for him to get from the left field gate to home plate, he would need to be driven on and off the field with one of our gators, and which of course cuts into the amount of time we have for half-inning breaks for promotions, things like that. So he'd be escorted on and off. His music that he gave us a day of was not timed properly for this quick of an exchange. So we warned him a little bit ahead of time that, hey, if it gets a little too tight, we're going to have to fade down your music, and that's going to be your cue to get off. He performs maybe 2 or 3 half-inning breaks.
Right.
Things are going okay, and then
How about that
boy,
close
oh
call,
boy,
though?
do they go south.
How about that close call?
So the one that I think is the TikTok that you mentioned, Asbury, and the one that we famously referenced in the control room was our wireless camera operator, Shad.
Shout out, Chad.
Down behind home plate trying to get a lot of close angles of the amazing Christopher. And while a lot of his shots were great, he was looking through the camera and didn't necessarily have the greatest
depth perception
to figure out how close he was getting to the amazing Christopher. This then became a conversation with me in the control room, our technical director in front of our TriCaster, and Shad, of me telling them, Shad, you got to move. Shad, you got to move. Shad, you got to move. And right as I tell him that, he takes one step back, and this mannequin just comes swiping right in front of him and almost takes him out. And you would think that he would have learned from that mistake, but I think he went right back in for another close-up.
Shad's fearless.
And the same conversation had to be had. But it was one of those ones where as soon as it's done, you just kind of have to stop and laugh at it and say, in the grand scheme of things, the people in the stands probably didn't notice that anything was unusual outside of a man dancing with mannequins on the field, and it was kind of the way the show was supposed to go. So very fortunate that people in the control room were able to roll with the punches, and that our main man Shad is more nimble than we give him credit for.
He is what I would call like the ultimate dad figure. Just everything about him. He's just got the dad reflexes.
He almost took a tumble this past year with the tornado tee off or whatever.
Yeah.
Knocked him back, stayed on his feet like a champ.
Oh, I had to legitimately tackle a guy in the tornado tee off this year, and it made it in the fan appreciation video.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of my favorite clips from this past year is people falling during tornado tee off, but especially the one where Asbury bodies a guy into the ground
Yes.
so he doesn't take out his own knees.
So I have not had the pleasure of running the control room at any point, but all three of you have. Tell me, I
You
mean,
can start this year.
I guess I could. But, tell me some of your favorite stories from there, anywhere from, Chaley-isms to any of your PA read or PA announcers, any of your technical directing stories. But my favorites are always the Chaley-isms. But, she hasn't been here for a few years, so I'm sure Nick and
Right.
Scott have some stories since then that can help fill that gap.
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest things from last year were Nick
Stuber!
yes. Forgot about that. Yeah, we had a employee.
He was the employee of the month.
Employee of the month.
Dakota. He worked for me in one of those one of the mascots, and he was employee of the month, and he gets to throw out a first pitch, and his last name is actually Stubler.
But our wonderful PA announcer gets on the mic, and this was the day that he came in with the hiccups. So he comes in, and then he starts hiccuping, and he says he cannot stop. He has a bottle of water and a towel, and he's like chugging the water, and then all of a sudden he's like, I don't feel well because I've been chugging this water, but I'm still hiccuping. So we struggle along for like the first 45 minutes of pregame, like the entire thing pretty much. And then he gets to the first pitches, and he has to stop every 2 seconds because he keeps hiccuping. And then Stuber comes up, and he goes, next up we got Stuber. And then for some reason he just starts rolling with it, and he's like, Stuber, that's my main man, Stuber. Nice pitch, Stuber, you got it, bud. Let's hear it for Stuber. And he's just going on, and he says his name wrong every single time.
Well, Nick, what about yourself? You have any fun stories from this past year?
Yeehaw.
Well, this one, yes, my favorite thing to do up in the press box was get on the microphone and shout out some yeehaws. I did a moo a couple of times.
So for those who don't know, the radar gun was sponsored by Bellevue University. They'd come on and go, it's hot on the Bellevue University radar gun, and the sound effect, pew pew. That's done manually. It's not a saved sound effect. They get on there.
They're so good all the time. They're probably so confused right now.
But other than that sound effect, there was a lot of other ones with the yeehaws and the moves, I guess.
Yeah, the games get long. And so you get to the 8th, 9th, sometimes 10th, 11th innings, and the sound guys played the same recordings over and over again all night. Everybody clap your hands. So we just start making our own noises into the microphone between pitches.
Well, Cody, what do you got?
Well, I just need to take a little bit of credit for myself, just letting the world know that I am the one that started that tradition.
Absolutely.
So,
Oh, yeah.
I was about to give you
appreciate it.
credit. Yeah.
Man, for the control room, I mean, for the 2 seasons I was up there with, again, the great Shaylee Danella, I think we had lists of just stories and moments that we created and compiled throughout the years. But one of my favorite Shaylee moments from the control room, as Nick alluded to, when you get into some of those later innings and it's 3 hours in already and things are not looking great, you get a little stir crazy sitting in the control room, kind of calling things out, listening to yourself say the same things over and over again, that you need to mix it up a little bit. So Shaylee and I started our own little play-by-play commentary, color commentator radio show while the games were going on. And Shaylee's baseball knowledge is up there with the best, so she was really able to pull her weight on that one.
What is the 20-80 rule that we always had with her?
80-20. So she would get 80% of the way, but then the last 20% was just way wrong. So if she tried really hard, she could sound like she knew a lot about baseball, but it just wasn't there. But one of my favorite times during, I guess, our radio segment was I believe it was the big eclipse was lining up to be, Omaha was supposed to be a great viewing spot for the eclipse. And so Shaylee goes, well, guys, gear up because the eclipse is coming to Omaha. And I said, well, Shaylee, the eclipse is going to be in space, but you can't do it in Omaha. That was a good one.
It's a very Rex Hudler moment.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I don't know. There's so many things that that are great about being up in that control room. I mean, you go a little crazy doing it over and over again, but the relationships you build with those people, the kind of inside jokes that you have is great. I mean, again, I got a list in front of me. I think this is our 2017 moments, but we had a new audio person helping us out one year, and he was a college kid and had a little bit of audio board experience, but not a ton. So I would kind of help him out and hover over him. And so we had something we had to play off of our ClickFX computer that was just really low. So I hover over him and I say, all right, I'm going to turn up your gain a little bit so this can be heard over the speakers. Just make sure you pop it back down before you play anything else. And he looks at me and says, yep, got it, no problem. Plays that thing, we move on. And all of a sudden, I think everyone in Sarpy County hears the loudest Ric Flair woo you've ever heard. And he had forgotten to bring down the gain, but it was the Ric Flair woo, so you couldn't be mad at it.
That is still talked about in the press box this year, and it's referred to as the power woo.
Yeah, Emily always made our new audio guy do a power woo.
Yeah, especially late in games, yeah.
Good. I mean, the other person I got to talk about is Craig Evans, one of the most entertaining PA announcers that I've ever been around. Whether he knows it or not, just some of the things that he rattles off subconsciously without even thinking about it is some of the funniest stuff that I've heard. I mean, for him,
his laugh is pretty great too.
Oh yeah,
he has a great laugh. We had Hunter Dozier on our team in 2017, and before he would do it into the mic, he would always just go to himself and go, "Hunt that Dozier." And, like, he would never actually announce it like that, but that's how he had to say the name to himself.
My favorite Craig Evans moment this year, and you may have to cut this out, I don't know, was when he had to announce a man for a first pitch whose name was Richard Reiser.
He would not. He was so mad.
He thought we were playing a trick on him. And I said, "No, that's his name. Please say it." And he goes, "It says Father Richard Reiser. This man is a priest." And he was refusing to do it. And I said, "Look, I'm going to check with Asbury on the field, but as of right now, that's what you're going to say." And I checked with Asbury, and Craig hears me check with him over the radio, and he looks at me the whole time, and he doesn't hear what Asbury says back to me, confirming that his name was indeed Father Richard Reiser. And I look at him and I go, "Craig, it's Father Richard Reiser." And he just screamed, "No, I'm not going to say that." And then the whole time he's just giggling before he comes up to throw the pitch. And he's like, "Throw it in there, Father," and then has to shut his mic off and just giggle to himself. And then he's like, "Great pitch, Father." And then that was the end of our first pitches that day. Yeah. But Craig had to compose himself.
All right, sorry, I got one last Craig story. One last one. So Safe Light used to sponsor strikeouts, I believe. As with a lot of in-game activations, you know, once you reach a certain number of whether it's runs, hits, strikeouts, what have you, you can then activate a promotion. Normally, when you're in the room, you also have to keep tally of all these promotions, make sure they're firing, and those activations and the partnership stuff is going smoothly. Without thinking, Craig, there's a strikeout. Craig turns it on his mic and says, "That's a Safe Light strikeout, and now fans, it's time to get coupons." And so while he's doing that, I say, no, we're still one away. And he just goes, "Hold on, folks," and mutes his mic. And then, sure enough, the next batter that comes out strikes out. And he turns on his mic and goes, "The wait is over." Well, that is the Safe Light strikeout. And he calls it and does things like that. So it's always entertaining. It's always fun, whether it's doing Southern accents or making fun of other people you're working with, or just having fun at watching the game. There's always so much stuff to do that it's a really fun time.
Nick, Cody, I'm really sad that you're not my coworkers anymore, but this has been phenomenal to talk to you again and reminisce and bring up some stories that, you know, I haven't talked about in a while. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We miss you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been great, guys.
Follow us on all of our social feeds, OMA Storm Chasers on Twitter, Omaha Storm Chasers on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for all those youths. Most of our TikToks not as successful as the amazing Christopher one, but we're still at it, so continue to keep up with us.
Oh, yeah. Give us 5-star reviews. Maybe even leave us a comment, leave us an email, a DM, whatever, and we'll go over it and add it to the podcast maybe.
We're like the Office suggestion box. We'll get to it eventually.
Also, no one has ever left a suggestion, so you could be the first.
Please do it.
Please.
We're begging you.
All right, say bye, Asbury.
Okay, bye.
We'll see you next time on Between Two Berms.